With us on the summit today is Jerry Day. Jerry, welcome.
Hello. Hi, Josh. Great to be with you.
You too as well. Now, I interviewed you on Take Back Your Power several years ago, and you've helped many people with solutions to smart utility meters and also other issues involving health and safety and rights. And I'm really looking forward to dive in today. We're going to talk about solutions to smart utility meters. But before then, which are of course part of the Internet of Things and linked to 5G eventually, but we're going to talk before that about you bring a really powerful big picture solution here. Like, you connect the dots in a really good way, and you do it with an intention and specific tools to educate and empower people. So I'm privileged to call you a colleague and a friend, and we'll dive in here. So before we do, I just want to introduce you by through reading your bio to our audience here. So Jerry Day is an Emmy-winning television producer and creator of freedom-inspiring media. His websites and YouTube videos have exposed millions of people to the hazards and harm caused by so-called smart utility meters through his...
I think that's thousands of people. Did you say millions of people?
Well, millions of people have seen your videos.
You're right, on the videos. There were to 7 million on my YouTube channel. You're right. Sorry.
There you go. Don't reduce yourself.
We're talking about the people that I directly help on the phone. That's thousands. And so we can talk about how that works.
Sure. And his YouTube channel is called Minivan Jack, all one word, and his websites are freedomtaker.com and emfhelpcenter.com. Right. And as we mentioned, Jerry has helped thousands of people find solutions to electronic utility metering, which is of course connected with the Internet of Things and global data harvesting. So Jerry, what can you tell us? Let's paint in broad strokes what's actually happening with 5G, Internet of Things, smart meters, and technocracy. Help us to understand kind of why this is happening, and what we can, maybe some initial things, what we can do about it.
Okay, there's a dream by the technocracy-ists or whoever is driving this whole thing. It's always been amazing that this whole smart meter rollout has happened in apparently a synchronized way globally. There's a very, very top-down hierarchy controlling this data gathering program. This is a mass surveillance program, but there's a dream on the part of the people who are installing this and instituting this system that there will be surveillance conducted that is nothing like anything imagined even in science fiction. When your appliances, your devices, your cell phone, you have these health monitors when you're jogging, a little wristwatch health monitor. This is taking actually your bodily functions and transmitting them real time in a data set to someone who wants to control you and wants to know that they have control of you. And the way they do that is to know everything about what you're doing at all times, and your status and your condition, even your emotional state will be recorded in the near future by your automobile, whether you want it to or not. They're planning all of these things to be instituted. And as we are tempted with gadgets that seem to make our lives more convenient, and we're more in touch with our loved ones and all, they know how to give us gadgets that tempt us, and in those gadgets they insert their surveillance equipment and their monitoring equipment and their tracking equipment and their data collecting equipment and their transmitting equipment. And that's really the main purpose. And if you think of your cell phone as a gadget you're going to pay for, and if it's convenient enough, and if you're going to use, if it gives you enough service, that's not what the industry is doing. The industry is simply thinking of a way to make you pay for your surveillance, and to have you own the equipment and pay for the equipment that will spy on you and deliver information about you and your family to a central point. And that data, and what I mean by the dream, is that this data, when you think about your emotional state, your bodily state, your biological state, everything you do, everything you buy, everyone you talk to, everything you say in all of your conversations, being collected and aggregated by artificial intelligence algorithms, which are capable of parsing all of that data and establishing a personality profile, a psychological profile. They will have you down like no one else could possibly have you down. I mean, before I even knew how high resolution this surveillance data would be, I was telling people, where were you in 2013 on Monday, August 3rd, and what were you doing? And nobody can tell you that, but the NSA can tell you that. They have that data, and they can pull it up in 2 seconds. And so your entire life is now cataloged and tracked and exhibited to people that are total strangers to you and people who do not have your best interests at heart. And as Edward Snowden says, when people say, well, I have nothing to hide, you certainly do. You may not have something to hide, but as Edward Snowden says, you have something to protect. And that is you, yourself, your family, your valuables, your wealth, your property, your liberty. All of these things you must protect. And those are under assault. Those, believe me, people are coming for you. Once they have all of that data in a way that the artificial intelligence algorithms can really parse and really deliver to them what they would call actionable data, you will hear from them. You will hear from people who will say, well, you have bad behavior on your energy usage. We've found that you used your washing machine at 3 p.m. We have a penalty for that. You'll see $80 charge on your power bill next month. There'll be all kinds of things like that coming up. But it's hard to imagine how they will apply this data. And they're probably the people who have the dream of collecting your data in this way are probably sitting around saying, man, what can, let's think of what we can do now. They have the instinct that if they can monitor your emotional state, if they can monitor all of your communications, if they can monitor what you buy and do and where you go every day, that they will have something more powerful than any central authority has ever dreamt of before. They know how powerful this will be, but they are probably just beginning to develop ways to exploit this and control you with this. And so, we have certain behavioral controls now. They're doing all kinds of things. In the schools, they're doing this relentless programming of environmental issues on children. So children are now programmed to feel as though they are criminals for being alive, because by being a human being, you're damaging the environment. So you owe the powers that be, the central authorities, some tremendous service and contribution in order to make up for the fact that you are criminally damaging the environment by breathing and by being alive and by being a human being occupying the planet. You are the problem. And so this is obviously propaganda, and it's obviously not something we should allow ourselves to be programmed with, those kind of ideas. But that's what schools are filled with. That's what our media is filled with. If I see those messages constantly, the little that I do see television, it's all this coming at you constantly, and not just in the news stories, but in the programming, in the TV scripts, in the movie scripts. It's coming through all of these media. So we're being programmed. At the same time, they're setting up this incredible collection system that will go so deeply into your psyche and will be able to produce such a vivid and accurate record of your psychological condition and your emotional responses. They will have, they can affect that with frequencies, and they can emit those frequencies from your smart meter. So, if they don't like how you're behaving, they can change it, and they will be able to do this more and more. And certainly when you have all these 5G terminals every 300 feet down the block covering the entire planet or whatever, there may be an important point I want to make right now. People are talking about the satellite system that SpaceX, Elon Musk is now talking about putting up 4,424 satellites, like within the next couple of years, and they've already put up 600 of them. And everybody's going, oh, we're going to be blanketed with radiation all over the planet, and you will be to some extent, but it's not exactly how how people are imagining this. There will, for 5G, which is what they intend to finally do, the absolutely global planet-wide rollout of connectivity, will not operate directly to satellite. Your telephone, your cell phone will not transmit to a satellite. That's impossible. The 5G doesn't go that far. It's not that powerful. And if it were, it would fry your brain if you were using the transmitting device near you. So the way that will work is that your phone will transmit to a relay, and then every so often there will be relays that go to the satellite. So people who are very much active on this business of the satellite radiation, you got to be very careful and learn the technology, because it may turn out that we're not going to be bathed so much with satellite radiation, but we will certainly be bathed with local transmitter radiation that will provide relays to the satellite. So the satellite may be to some extent incidental to the fact, I mean, if you think about it, they just don't want to run wires. They just want it all wireless, because if you don't have satellites circling the planet, relaying all of our cell phone calls to each other, and you can immediately call somebody in China or the Ukraine or South Africa, all they have to do is put relay transmitters hardwired on the ground, and you could, or wireless transmitters. They don't need satellites. It's just a fraction of the cost to do it with satellites. So it doesn't change much that it's going into outer space in some ways. Now, when we know more about what they're actually going to be transmitting and how much they actually can beam that technology, as opposed to flood the whole Earth with radiation, we'll know more about whether that's a serious problem. But we have to do more research, and we have to wait until they determine how those satellites are actually going to work clearly, before we know what our protest should be, what we should object to, whether or not we want to build our our shielding into our attics, and stuff like that to be protected from this. It may be a waste of time. Anyway, point made.
Thanks, Jerry. That a couple points there. I think that this is an exercise in us getting tuned in to our free will, our intention. Some might say sovereignty, but basically the rights that are, many of which are constitutionally recognized, and as we do that, we're becoming aware that the rule of law is being diminished rapidly, and in some cases is essentially gone, because corporations have taken over. Even Harvard Ethics is saying the FCC is the most corrupted organization, government organization.
The most captured.
Captured, that's right. So, but really, in the bigger picture, Jerry, we're moving through some fear and some compression, but I mean, I believe that the awareness has never been higher. It's always increasing about 5G, and it's just, we need to continue to spread the awareness to, for example, our elected officials, and give them a chance to do the right thing, like we're seeing in many local governments are standing up to the FCC, issuing lawsuits and also new ordinances. And worldwide, this is happening, especially in Europe and other countries. So it is an exercise of becoming aware, sharing the information, and getting on the field, right? So for our viewers who are new to the extent of this problem, it definitely goes beyond just the 5G transmitters. But I also wanted to touch in on what you just said. Some people, when they first hear about, or even after hearing about it a number of times, that the surveillance aspect of surveillance capitalism, you could say, has come in, and they'll say, well, I have nothing to hide, or there's nothing I can do about it. those are two false positions. Both of those are false positions. Number one is, if you have nothing to hide, then give me all of your passwords right now for everything online and your banking
numbers,
right.
Where your children are,
right.
yes, where you keep your valuables at home. Oh, sure. It just goes on and on. I mean, it's a ridiculous thing to say. You have something to hide. You have something to protect. Liberty is important. Privacy is important. If it wasn't, our country wouldn't have survived. We have protections for those things. And what we don't have institutionally, we have to have privately, and we have to do that consciously. And we have to make sure that we are taking responsibility for protecting not only ourselves, but our families and our communities. Yeah.
And you have, through your website, freedomtaker.com, several years ago, you started to share with people your notice process, your contractual, legal, lawful process. And so we have it's a unique time because the rule of law is being rapidly eroded, but elected officials and laws are still in place, so they can be used, strategically, still within this window of time. So, like yourself, for example, you've empowered many people to send those notices and to do that strong, warning shot across the bow. And now Empower Movement and others have a different strategy. I've entrusted that organization, after co-founding it, to Cal and to their board, but they have another notice of liability process. So we're trying to figure out how to get at this notice-based system and back it up, put some teeth into it, and enforce the laws, enforce the liability. And also in Australia, Ray Broomhall is interviewed in this summit, and so he has, I don't know if you heard about this, Jerry, but he's had 900 small cell sites removed now using a criminal-based process in Australia. Really? So it's a really interesting time that is really calling us forward, and we are having results, but only if we actually step up, become educated, share the information, and get involved.
Right. If I can comment on, because that ties into something I wanted to bring up with that you mentioned earlier. You were talking about informing your local officials. My position is that is not necessary in a certain way. Your officials are well informed, and it is the pretense of ignorance that is just another tool in their basket. And so, we want to inform them because we want it on record that they are informed. But they are well informed. When you come before Congress or come before even a county supervisor board or a city council, and they pretend to not know anything about this. There's a video online where a UN whatever they are commissioner was pretending to be completely ignorant about the hazards of wireless radiation. Come on.
Secretary General, yeah, I helped release that earlier.
That's right. And so, just come on, and so there's a big pretense. And I've seen from certain politicians who I would rather not name that they're exposed over time as very clearly acting very differently from how they speak. They have a whole persona and a whole message and agenda that they deliver to the public, which is extremely in contrast to how they personally behave and what they personally believe. And of course, if you're trying to maintain your position in the public eye and you're trying to serve the powers that be, you're going to be extremely artificial and manufactured. And so these public officials, the last thing we can do is trust that they really know and believe what they say they know and believe. They have much better access to information than we do. And so when we say, we've got these alt media and we're really tuned in and we're gonna inform our public officials about this, they knew it 5 years ago. They're way ahead of us, but they're taking huge amounts of money in order to sell a certain agenda, and they're going to pretend to be a certain way and have a certain knowledge base, and they're going to pretend that if you don't agree with that, you're some kind of kook and loony, and you're out there on the fringe, conspiracy theorist or whatever. So this is all narratives. It's all propaganda. It's all theater. And so I would urge people to think differently in terms of how and why you're informing your officials about certain things. You're informing them not so that they will learn it. They do know it. You're informing them so that it can be shown that they were informed and that their lies no longer work after that moment when you serve that certified mail of that notice of liability or whatever it is, that they no longer have the opportunity to say, I didn't know this could hurt people. I didn't know this was damaging and wrong. I didn't know this was invading privacy. I didn't know this was violating rights. You just notice them, that it is. And these notices that seem like, well, they're sort of busy work, or, you know, they're not really demanding anything. No, they're very powerful. When you put that on record, and here's what the danger is: when you send these notices and you forget you send them, and then you go on pretending with them like as if you didn't notice them. You know, they're coming out continuing to lie, and you go back and you fall into their lies. No, I sent you a notice on such and such a date that you were violating my rights, that you were emitting excess radiation that's in violation of building biology safety codes on my property, and you have to stop. And if you don't stop within 30 days of my delivery, you are personally liable for all harm and damage. And you can't get out of that. You can't walk away from that. You're on notice. And if you do it, and I know Cal knows a lot about this, but if you do it in what's called an administrative process, and that's simply a fancy legal way of saying you told them 3 times. So you send them the notice of liability, then you send them the notice of liability with a headline that says second notice, notice of fault, and then you send them a third notice that has the headline third notice, notice of default. And you are now agreeing with all my terms and conditions and presentments and representations. So this is administrative process, and if you ever get in a court of law on this, the judge will say, well, how many times did you tell them? Once? Well, they might not have understood that. Twice? Well, okay, that's better. 3 times? You're done. That's perfected administrative process. You noticed them 3 times, officially certified mail, proof of service. The ball is now in their court. They have to respond to that. And of course, they'll send you back some kind of evasion or bullying or something. This is what we're used to doing, is the notice of liability to the utility company. And you're telling them this is a radiation emitting fire hazard surveillance device that emits dirty electricity. And so you got 4 major problems with this device. You're responsible and liable for all of them. And of course, what do they send you back? They say, well, if you don't like our service, we're going to cut it off. We're going to arrest you for interfering with our business. You're a bad person. Whatever. They attack you. They bully you. Is that a rebuttal? No. They didn't answer your allegation. They didn't deny your allegation because they can't. Because if they do it, they have to do it basically under a sworn oath. And if they do that, they're in perjury. They're a liar because they are violating your rights. They are emitting radiation. They are conducting surveillance. They are emitting dirty electricity. They are causing a fire hazard with the lack of surge protection in the electronic meters. They explode in flames every day. So they can't say they're not doing it. So what do? They attack you. And so that's a perfect opportunity to simply send them the next notice. Oh, second notice, notice of fault. Sorry. Bullying and abuse and intimidation is not rebuttal. So these people are really, I wouldn't want to be them. They have no place to hide. And if we do our notices properly and we have those on the record and we keep those in a file with our mail receipts, and we can bring those back up any time someone in the house starts to get electromagnetic sensitivity, starts to get the insomnia, the headaches, the brain fog, the mood swings, the damaged relationships. We bring that out and we say, here's your claim. You agree to our terms. You now owe me 50 grand. And if I have to go to a legal action to collect this, you're probably going to be more like 500 grand. Lawyers are expensive. So take your choice. Pay me 50 grand today or 500 grand later, or maybe even more, especially if someone dies, especially if your little radio frequency smart meter shuts off someone's pacemaker and kills them, which has already happened. You're going to have a major lawsuit. So we have to put the instruments in place, and we have to do it by the thousands and millions, so that what'll happen very shortly, within a few years, will be what we're seeing now with Monsanto. $100 million settlement here, $2 billion settlement there. Boom, 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 boom. Mushrooming situation. It will happen with radio frequency imposition on the public. It's just a matter of time. And the first step in that is getting the notices in. You can't do this. This is harmful. You're liable. Tell me different. And if they can't tell you different, which they can't, then they're liable. And we'll have another Monsanto, probably within a few years, and we'll see. It'll be a question where legitimate courts will have no choice. I mean, they'll just simply have no choice. It's like the Monsanto thing. It's obviously they found direct correlation with non-Hodgkin's lymphomatic cancer, whatever it is. It's all established now in science. So all they have to do is come in and repeat the paperwork, and that'll be what happens with the radio frequency.
We're already seeing like Lloyd's of London, not insurance, like big insurance companies are not insuring. They're refusing insurance for wireless technologies. Swiss Re, Fortune 500 company in Switzerland. I've mentioned this before. That listed EMF radiation as the highest possible long-term risk rating. So we are definitely seeing the beginning of that, and we hasten with that. We speed that process up of basically getting rid of these harmful technologies by every action that everyone out there takes. So also wanted to mention, I've seen both sides of the emailing your elected officials, question. I can see both sides of that. Number one is, I would say that talking with some elected officials, in fact, in this summit, we talked with Raphael Mayheim, who is the elected official in the canton of Vaud, Switzerland, and he spearheaded that moratorium against 5G. And he's saying elected officials, they need to know. They may not know because there's so much going on. Life is happening so fast, and there's all these issues, and they're getting lobbied left, right, and center, as you say. But one thing they need to get is they need to receive communication in numbers, and then they start taking it seriously. And as well as having an opportunity to come and be part of the solution if they don't know. And then, in addition to it getting on the record, you give them that opportunity, and then you say, okay, look, if you're not going to be part of the solution, if you're going to allow this to happen, then you're going to be liable. So that's what we're seeing as a clear through line there. I wanted to mention your.
Could I just add one point to that? Since you are communicating, why not make them liable? In other words, don't just make it, I'm informing you that you're killing people. Why not say, I'm informing you you're killing people, therefore you'll be liable. So I would urge that, I'm not sure what processes you're using for public information, but I would urge that people take it to that point where there's no backing out. They're trapped. It is a trap. They've trapped themselves by committing harm. And when the public says, we know you're doing it, we see it, now we're going to hold you personally responsible. So that's an idea you and I both had way back, and you've been doing with Cal. And, so don't waste your vote. Don't waste your communications resources. Take it right to that level where you're making someone absolutely liable and personally responsible and accountable for what they're doing. Go ahead, I interrupted you.
And just, no, it's fine. For those watching, the organization, Jerry's mentioned Cal a couple times. The organization is inpowermovement.com, IN, then the word power, then movement.com. As of the time of this recording, they're still working on their automated system, so they can't help large numbers of people all at the same time. But that's something that's been a long time in the works, and it is, I believe, going to be worth it when it finally is released. Now, you mentioned on your, you didn't mention, but your notice process on freedomtaker.com, about 3 or 4 years ago, there was a inquiry into basically the corrupt practices between CPUC, the California Public Utilities Commission, corresponding with Pacific Gas and Electric, the utility, in a way that showed illegal collusion. Right. One of those series of emails that were made public as part of this investigation mentioned your process. It mentioned your notice-based process, and there was the context in which that was mentioned. There was fear around that Because what? Because if if enough people do this thing and they don't forget, like you said, they don't forget they did it, or they don't just say, oh well, it didn't work, but they actually like follow through and actually understand that this commerce and notices is the way that all of this business happens, then their game is up when that happens to a critical threshold, right? So I just wanted to recognize that you know that you're like what you're doing is legitimate. You've made another video on affidavits on YouTube, and you explain in simple layman's terms an unrebutted affidavit stands as fact, right?
That's a YouTube video. That's a YouTube video called "The Power of Paper," and people have responded very well to that. And if you just go to YouTube, and my channel is Minivan Jack, but if you just search "The Power of Paper" and see my face, you'll see that video. And it's an eye-opener to a lot of people that don't realize how much power they have individually. Everything now is contract. Everything is contract. Yeah. Your government is a corporate entity. If you're not entering contract, there's nothing they can do to you technically. You know, of course, they violate their own rules all the time. But if you don't sign something, you know, I made one point in one of my videos, if the government has the right to do something to you, why do they need your signature? So if you go to the DMV and they require you sign something, I can promise you you're waiving your rights. You're signing away some rights. If they had the right to make you register your car or register yourself as a driver with a license, you would not have to sign the paper. If you were required to file a 1040 form, you would not have to sign it.
Yeah, so it's all contract based.
You are waiving your rights. Right. You are entering a contract with them that says, I'm giving up my rights and I'm giving you the authority over me. So think about that every time you sign a document for the government. Every single document, again, if they had the right to do it, you wouldn't have to sign it.
Yeah. Now, at this time, Jerry, the cynic might say, well, it's not really a viable option in life to not sign anything.
Yeah,
you have to get by, and so they've kind of, you know, they've got us, you know, in a position that's not favorable. But at the same time, like we need to continue to become aware.
Yes.
And
think about why. Game. Think about why you don't have a choice to sign something. It's called coercion.
Yeah.
Okay. So what happens? And I did this. I made a video about the IRS, and I called the IRS and I said, do you have the right to force me to put my signature on a paper? I thought I controlled my signature. Do you? And they put me on hold, and it was like a 20-minute call. And finally they said, oh, well, you'll have to go to the private sector. We can't tell you. I said, I don't go to the private sector for IRS policy. Do you have the authority to force me under threat of coercion to sign my name to a paper? And if I sign that paper, is that contract enforceable? And the answer is clearly no. Any lawyer would tell you, no, you can't coerce a contract and you can't enforce a contract that was coerced. So the answer was very clear, but the IRS refused to answer that question. And so I withheld my signature from a 1040 form. And the next thing I knew, I had a $44,000 compounded civil penalty against me. And I went back and forth with the IRS on this for about 6 years. And eventually there was a trick and I got out of it. And I could help people with that, how I did that, if they are curious and they contact me. But
you're probably going to get a ton of people contacting you now.
well, let me give you a hint on that. If you're a perfect taxpayer who's paid all of his taxes, filed all of his 1040s, and such, there's a get out of jail free form at the IRS called 14402, and it's something they don't want people to know about, and only because I resisted them for 6 years and they saw they were never going to get anything out of me. It's a way to get $500 out of a taxpayer and make everything go away.
Right.
And so
I just want to jump in there and say, like, we're, you know, not advocating to do anything specific with regards to taxes.
We're not legal advisors. We're not IRS experts. We're laymen, and we have opinions. And
also, I don't think Jerry or I would have a problem if what we call as government we're actually a small, you know, group of elders that are committed to serve the greatest good and need some need to build some infrastructure that serves the people. What we have is a corporate, cabal, you could say, or global elite corporatist scheme that has taken over government and is, not only deploying harmful agendas such as smart meters and 5G and changing laws so that they can get away with breaking our constitutional rights, but they're actually, in illegal wars. They're doing illegal testing. They're.
Oh, it's completely illegal.
So
if you're
that's the context in which we're talking about this, not in the context of trying to evade something or trying to get something for free. This is out of principle, this conversation.
Yeah, if you're under the impression that the powers that be or the authorities or government or whatever, that there's any benevolence in what they're doing anymore, you haven't been paying attention. It's the individual against the collective. And they love to have black against white. They love to have old against young. They love to have gender against gender. They love to have transgender against the other thing. They love to have whatever they have that will divide us. The only battle is individual rights against the collective. That is the only fight. If you can master that and focus on that, everything else is nonsense. Everything else is minimal compared to what you're paying for allowing large institutions and the powers that be to control your life and to set the rules and to set the agenda and to tell you through media constantly, day in and day out, what you're supposed to think, how you're supposed to view them, and how you're supposed to behave. So no, we no longer have that benevolent leader, that official, whatever. And I think you and I agree pretty well on that.
Yeah. Well, let's just jump into this. So the smart meter conversation. Yeah. So we have 9 questions here for you, Jerry. We're gonna aim at 90 seconds per answer.
We'll rip through. Okay.
Okay. And I just want to say that I mentioned you're in Take Back Your Power, my film, which can be seen for free at takebackyourpower.net.
It's changed a lot of people's lives. I hear about that all the time. They started their awareness journey on Take Back Your Power. It's a fantastic film.
Yeah, and I encourage people to, continue going into this process because we are, I think, as a whole, humanity is coming toward solutions, and it's going to take courage and resourcefulness and community and just sharing this information. So Jerry, question 1: what are the main problems caused by electronic utility meters, aka smart meters? Right,
we did that a little bit. It's the 4 major things: radiation, dirty electricity, surveillance, and fire hazard. Radiation, I'm talking about RF radiation. Dirty electricity is electric fields. They're very different. They have to be handled different ways. You can shield radio frequencies. You cannot shield electric fields. You do that with line filtering. We can get into that, but we don't have time today. But that's on emfhelpcenter.com. All of those. There's a video, an introductory video at emfhelpcenter.com. Upper left corner homepage, click on that, and it explains how to really launch into taking back the violations that your meter is causing, and it tells you how to do it without going into adversarial confrontation and battle with your utility company. You can fix it. You can take matters into your own hands. So the smart meter is something you can control much more than you believe, and you know now. Even with that thing on the side of your house, you can fix it. You can take care of the problems.
Okay, good. Second question is, utility meters consistently lie about what various meters are called and what kind of radiation and electrical disturbances they cause. Please explain.
Right. Never let them say, never say, I don't want a smart meter. You say, I don't want an electronic meter. So there's 2 kinds of meters, a good one, a bad one. The good one is called electromechanical. The bad one is called electronic.
Electromechanical is your analog meter that doesn't send signals.
The kind your grandma had, the old safe with the surge protection and without the surveillance. Now, if you say smart meter, they'll say, oh, yeah, okay, we won't give you a smart meter. We'll give you this other meter that's identical with a different brand name. Smart meter is just a brand name. And you were talking about when they lie, that's one of their big lies. They say, oh, this is not a smart meter. It doesn't matter. An electronic meter is the bad guy. The electromechanical meter is the good guy. If you use that language, you'll eliminate the confusion on that. I'm sorry, what was the rest of your question on that?
No, that's fine. Okay. Question 3, should I accept the utilities opt-out offer?
I recommend you don't. Now, everybody has an opinion. That's my opinion. And the reason I recommend you don't is because it's not an opt-out. There's 4 problems: radiation, surveillance, dirty electricity, and fire hazard. What are they opting you out of? Some of the radio frequency. What happens with the fire hazard? Still there. It's an electronic meter. What happens with surveillance? Still there. Your whole life is an open book. What happens with all of this, the dirty electricity? It disrupts your incoming current. It has a switch mode power supply. They're stealing electricity from you to power their surveillance device. That sends dirty electricity all through your house. You need a line conditioner to fix that. So they're lying. It's not an opt-out. All they're saying is, oh, it'll transmit less radio frequency or none even. Well, so what? That's one of 4 major problems. So we have at emfhelpcenter.com a notice of fraud. If you offer me an opt-out that doesn't take care of radiation, surveillance, fire hazard, and dirty electricity, all 4, you're committing fraud because it's not an opt-out. It's a fake thing. So we sent them a notice of fraud. And that's another one of those documents that you get on record. And then later on, when your house has a fire that starts at the smart meter, you noticed them on that fraud. They're noticed. They are liable, and they get the major lawsuit. And I should go back real quick to this thing of why we send out notices. If 1 million people send out notices, there would be 5 that could start that legal process. They would have the money to afford a lawyer. They would miraculously be able to find a lawyer that really understands and cares about the problem. There's a lot of ducks that have to fall in a row in order for this to happen. That's why it takes numbers. It's not because 20, 50 million people are all going to sue. It's because if the right people sue, it's only going to take 5, 10, or 20, and the whole system's going to crack apart. So the numbers are very important for that reason, because there are certain people, unfortunately, it's how bad you're injured. And if somebody's house gets burned down and somebody gets killed, that's sad, but in a way, that's an opportunity. That is when our notices go into full play, and we start talking about the $100 million lawsuits and the settlements.
Good.
Next question.
90 seconds. That was really good, though. But
okay. Trying to hold it down.
No, thank you for this.
Sure.
Okay, how can I get my utility meter to provide a safe and lawful electromechanical meter?
Yeah, you can't. And that's the secret, is that they won't do it. And so that's why we say go to the solutions at EMF Help Center to where you work around that. You can get line conditioning. Boom, your dirty electricity is gone. You can do some shielding. Boom, your radio frequencies are managed. You can protect your house from the fire hazard with certain types of metal flashings and collar and this and that, so where at least the house won't burn down, it'll just fry the meter. You can when you put in your line conditioning, you're also mitigating the surveillance, because the line conditioner scrubs the data and it balances the data, and they can no longer identify when you're turning off and on appliances. So there's all 4 problems I just solved, all 4.
I want to say though, to everyone watching, you have to go through the steps. I would encourage you to go through the steps of demanding your safe electromechanical meter, and in some states there is an analog opt-out. So don't take that as a hard no to start with. But what Jerry's talking about is most utilities have made that difficult.
Well, the very first thing we tell them is send in your notice of liability, and that's doing that. That is telling them that they have to do something about this, that it's on them. So the notice of liability is the first thing we recommend, even though all of the other solutions are non-confrontational, non-adversarial. You control it, you fix it yourself. Absolutely start with the notice of liability. That's a free download at EMF Help Center with a lot of other useful documents too, if you want to use them.
And it seems like that links into question 5. Can I protect myself from unsafe and unlawful utility meters without a confrontation with my utility company?
Yeah, and that was my little loaded question answer is of course you can. And that is the entire focus of EMF Help Center. We spent 5 or 6 years putting people in direct adversarial confrontation with their power company, because that's what they wanted. They said, I want my own electromechanical meter. I want to threaten them that if they don't give me a safe and lawful meter, I will put one on myself because I have it right in my hands. And we were helping supply those. And that was turning into a major battle. Nobody was getting anywhere because nobody could afford to follow through and sue them and do the whole thing. So it's going to be a question of mitigate yourself, and don't worry so much about installing the electromechanical meter. Mitigate the problems of the electronic meter. At least for now, that's our best solution, because the answer to that question is no. They're playing hardball. They're going to hurt you. They're going to come back. They're going to cut off your electricity. They're doing things like arresting people for interfering with their business. The police, in their incredible, unfathomable ignorance, are supporting that and actually arresting people who are doing nothing but trying to defend their safety, rights, and privacy. It's insane what the law enforcement has, done in some of these instances. So we have to stay away from that. If law enforcement is going to come in and enforce corporate policy for which they have no jurisdiction, we are in big trouble. You have to keep these people at arm's length, keep them out of your way. Don't get into the confrontation. Luckily, there are things you can do, and we've developed those. EMF Help Center. There's a center column right at the homepage called Solutions. Mm-hmm. It's a long column, but it's easy to read, and step by step you go through that. First thing is notice a liability. Then you look at the fire hazard. Then you look at the radiation, surveillance, dirty electricity. Boom, boom, boom. Solution. So it's all there.
So send in the communications, stand for your rights, put it in notice, get it in on the record, so to speak, and then there's other things that you can do that Jerry's website helps. So, okay, number 6, if the utility does not provide a safe and lawful meter, and I can't afford to have my electricity turned off, what can I do? You've already touched on that as well.
That's it. Yeah, we've covered it. Yeah. Just take the solutions one at a time. There are those 4 main problems. It's all spelled out and explained very clearly in the video at EMF Help Center. Then you understand the problem very clearly. Then you go through the website and you take matters into your own hands. You can do it all, and it's self-empowerment. You're the authority, and you do have the ability, if you want to do it, to take care of every one of those problems caused by that meter without having it removed and without getting into the confrontation with the power company, because anything you do to remove that meter or to demand it be removed will wind up in a very, very ugly situation where you're being dominated by a super wealthy and powerful institution who has the cops and the courts on their side just because they're rich and powerful. So you don't want to go there. But you still need to get what you're saying, though. Like, help me understand, because, and I have my own perspective on this too. But I feel you still need to get your notice in there and do all 3 of your notices. Default your process. That puts you in the driver's seat, and then share with other people this information. And that's what Empower Movement's all about: to do this in numbers, strengthen numbers, strengthen community, and meeting together in groups in person. Number 7, radio frequencies are one problem, and dirty electricity is another problem. Right. What's the difference? You mentioned this before, but just dive into it a little bit more. Yeah, that's worth emphasizing. Dirty electricity is not shieldable. So they put this device on your house and they create this electric field, and it penetrates everything, and it's like magnetism or gravity. It goes through everything. You cannot shield it. And people have a hard time with this. You imagine if you wanted to shield something, a metal ball, and you put it inside a metal box. Well, it doesn't become weightless. Gravity still affects it. That's how dirty electricity works. So you can shield radio frequencies because radio frequencies are like light. They emanate from a source. They're being transmitted, and they shine in all directions just like light. And so a shield, you can use mirrors, you can use reflectors, whatever. You can shield it, bounce it around. Never shield without grounding the shield. That's what pulls the electric fields and the radio frequencies out of the environment. If you just put up a barrier, a metal barrier, it could be foil or it could be a reflective material or a shielding cloth or whatever, that will just reflect like a mirror, and you'll wind up with problems in your environment. So the grounding pulls that out. So shielding is fairly straightforward and simple once you understand a few basic principles of shielding and grounding. The dirty electricity is a little more difficult, but you don't have to solve that because there are devices. They're called line conditioners, and you install, some of them are plug-in. I don't personally necessarily recommend some of the smaller gadget type ones. There's some better ones on the market. We have some information about that at EMF Help Center. But if you get the right kind of line conditioner, you immediately level out that dirty electricity, and you have no more or almost no more electric fields emanating from your lines. So that's the easy way to remember is RF, you shield and ground, and dirty electricity, you condition with a line conditioner. And that's pretty much the start of that intro, but there's more to it, but we've got the information on the web.
Good. And I also want to mention to all our viewers out there, Terry Stodden is an expert in dirty electricity. He's also on the summit, so check out his talk as well. Okay, number 8, people in my household are getting sick and tired for no apparent reason. How can I tell if that is caused by the utility meter or other sources of EMF or some other cause?
Right. This is the common thing. And hundreds and hundreds of phone calls to me were, we got sick, we couldn't figure out why, we had these symptoms, we went to the doctor, they didn't know what, they gave us pills, and it didn't help at all. And then we realized it all started on the day they put in that smart meter. I heard that exact conversation hundreds of times.
That's how I got into making Take Back Your Power, was my friend had his story, one of those exact stories like what you just described.
Right. So when you have these mysterious illnesses, and especially insomnia, headaches, vertigo, mood swings, brain fog, that kind of thing, neurological problems, those are the initial ones, especially the ones for people who are EMF sensitive. This is what people don't understand. It's like an allergy. 15 to 20% of the population is sensitive to EMF. They're just born that way. They're genetically that way. And those are the people that are getting these symptoms. The rest of us won't really get the symptoms. We'll get cancer 5 or 10 years down the line from too much radio frequency exposure, too much electric field exposure, but we won't really feel the immediate clinical symptoms. The people who are feeling those are usually what we call electromagnetic sensitive people. And it could be one person out of a family, and the rest of the family is saying, oh, you're crazy, I feel fine. It's very unfair. It's very frustrating for the person who's going, man, I can't even think in here, my head hurts. And you know, they don't know where to turn. And quite often, as you say, they don't have any idea that it's caused by some kind of radio frequency. It could be your smart meter, very likely, because that's high energy density pulse radiation, very damaging. But it also could be a cell tower down the street, your Wi-Fi, your neighbor's Wi-Fi, your cordless phones, your microwave oven, all this stuff, especially the combination, the cumulative effect of all these, will take an electromagnetic sensitive person and put them into symptoms.
And you can tell with like a Cornet device, electrosmog device, like you're talking about, you can tell exactly where it's coming from. So just one thing on that, my conversation with Tom O'Brien, he talked about overall toxic load. So he mentioned, 247 pounds of chemicals are produced every day per person in the United States, as an example. So overall toxic load, there's a certain threshold, and people might have different thresholds. Kids have different thresholds, and adults have different thresholds than the elderly. So by reducing, chemicals and things that aren't intended for our body, and reducing wireless EMF, you're reducing, both sides of the overall toxic load, you could say.
Right. It's weird when you look at these corporations, what they're doing, the chemicals and the fields that they're putting out, the radio frequencies, and how government hasn't put together 2 and 2 that, like, you can only take so much of this. They look at each one going, well, that's an acceptable exposure. Oh, that's an acceptable exposure. And they're not looking at the fact that there's 500 of them. And so you're exactly right. And so the impression is, after a while, somebody is intentionally depopulating the planet. It's like, how would government let all of this slide? Well, the answer to that is we have to now be responsible for what we allow ourselves to be exposed to, just like you say. And it's turning out it's very important to look for organic foods, non-pesticide type foods. There's apparently glyphosate in everything now, and it's far greater problem than we thought it was. So organic foods, and staying away from the radio frequencies, staying away from the toxic, looking at what kind of house cleansers you use. A lot of those are really bad. If it smells bad, it's probably really bad for you. There's just all kinds of common sense things you can do, but there's also great information if you surf around on the web and look for healthier living, look for avoiding toxic things in your environment. There's some great, I just saw a great talk by Seneff, Dr. Seneff.
Yeah, Stephanie Seneff, MIT.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh boy, what phenomenal information if you can find her on YouTube. And So this is now we have the information we need, this enlightening information to live better and stay away from all these toxic and unhealthful exposures that are just being bombarded on us at this point.
But we are seeing some positive signs, right? Like, I mean, with Monsanto, you mentioned another $2 billion lawsuit and like the huge amounts of money here in May of 2019.
Right.
So things are going in the right direction. We're not quite at that place where it's, very well could take a quick nosedive for Monsanto and Bayer, and getting this stuff off the shelves, out of our lives, could potentially happen if people continue to push that. We're maybe not that far along in the whole EMF smart meter 5G wireless thing, but we have to take encouragement, because way more people are engaged now than there were 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago.
Every day.
So I just want to jump into, last question, and then we'll kind of take a collective breath here, because I know we've been a lot of information in the last coming through quickly, not directly related to smart meters, but why, in your perspective, is global satellite 5G so dangerous?
Well, obviously it's a lot more wireless. Obviously it's the worst problem in the long run. Even if people are dropping dead from the wireless, the worst problem will be social control. The invasiveness of the type of data that they'll be getting with 5G, with the Internet of Things, with the way your car will monitor your driving, there'll be nothing to send you a traffic ticket, because they'll know what your car was doing. I mean, this type of surveillance, and I plan, if I ever go in to buy a brand new car at a dealer, I like old cars, at certain type of cars, but you have a lot of money, you want to get a brand new car, I'm going to go into that dealer, I'm going to say, I'm ready to buy, I got the money, all you got to do is tell me that my car won't spy on me.
Yeah, good.
And I tell you, if it's going to spy on me, I'm going to walk out, and you're going to see my back and the door slamming. And you tell a car dealer that, you say, where did you think you get the right to go into the surveillance business, with all this computerization of the car? In fact, I don't even want a computer in my car, because if there's an EMP, it's a paperweight. I want a car with no computers. I want a car that'll keep running if there's an electromagnetic pulse. And we could get one from the sun that would disable cars at this point with the amount of computerization that the cars have. So no, I want a car that I can rely on, and a car that's mine and working for me, and not sending my personal data to who knows who. So I would recommend, if I could advise your listeners anything at all, is to insist on non-spyware in everything. I wanted to have a website called nospytech.com. I believe I have that URL. A couple of years ago, I said, that's what we need, nospytech.com. So there would be a certification agency that would say, we've looked at this product and we've certified that it's not spying on you and you can trust it. And here's our little UL stamp of approval, or whatever certificate. We need something like that, because people don't want to be spied on. Shouldn't they have an opportunity to have some certification that say, oh, good, this is a safe product, it's not spying, I'll buy that.
Very good idea. Yeah, it's a standards body that is unbiased, that is vetting products and companies and different things that do not participate in corporate surveillance. Exactly. So, so I want to thank you, Jerry, for your fire and your intellect and your emotion and your intention is being channeled in a way to protect life. Like, obviously, you have a lot of passion and a lot of fire, and I'm so glad that comes through in this process of you're really protecting life. You're not in it for the money, and you help hundreds of people. We were talking earlier today. You said probably in the thousands on your websites, on emfhelpcenter.com and on freedomtaker.com.
But
spoken on the phone with thousands. But let me just finish this, because you're doing that almost entirely for free or by donation. So if you're watching this and you value Jerry's contributions, and whether you've gone to him or you've seen one of his videos, or you go there now to one of his websites, please donate and support Jerry, because he's not even asking for it, but just as a way to offer your energy back to him. I would just encourage you to do that, because he's one of the people that are really making a difference in this conversation. So thank you, Jerry. Jerry. Your websites are freedomtaker.com, emfhelpcenter.com. And I wanted to, just as we close out here, sorry to interrupt, but really quickly, we could kind of like close out this conversation with something else you and I were talking before, which is you're walking your walk, you're off grid, you're near
I live
LA.
on off-grid solar, well water, small tank propane.
And you were telling me about this process of when, you know, you start to take back your power, literally. You're off grid, you're producing your own energy, and your lights are hooked up to a 12 volt system, and you only have a few outlets, but it's what you need. You're telling me about the internal, process that is part of this, of like you're becoming like aware of your surroundings more. You're tuning into your environment and to nature, and that process that I think a lot of people can relate to, of when we shut things off, when we turn off the Wi-Fi, when we're producing our own energy.
You start to connect and be present in a way that you go, wow, I'm not absorbed in media right now. I'm not being distracted by, you tend to come out and become more kind of aware and present. It feels like, I think the story I was telling you is we're driving in the car, just listening to the radio and flipping the radio and then shutting the radio off. And I become aware that I suddenly sensitize to the scenery, the environment, to the present. And I realized that media was keeping something inside me turned off, was keeping me unaware. I wasn't really connected, So yeah, I think we have a lot of opportunity for more awareness, more presence, more connectivity, and kind of more intelligent action to benefit our lives and the lives of others. If we sort of tune in a little bit more to nature, tune a little bit more to our surroundings, our presence with people, other people, that kind of thing.
Wow. Jerry, thank you so much for your time and your
Thank you, Josh.
experience and your, just your intention and service today, and just for talking with us today about these topics. I really appreciate it.
Anytime. I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, Josh, and good luck to you and everybody. Look into InPower too, and we're all doing it the best we can. So I certainly respect and admire what you've done and how terrific you've marketed all this and you've driven all this and how many people you've brought into this movement. So all my best admiration to you too. Thank you, Josh.
Thanks, Jerry.